I think we should make the plan, have to go online too, that way they get to see you when you.
I was going to go online, but I can't get into my computer. Yeah, I tried very hard. Sometimes it's difficult.
And that's what I gotta be careful, because I'm awesome sometimes. I like those people that you want to pick that side, and
Yeah.
you kept this. And
I have to. Yeah, but you can put it on.
How are you, John? There's the bird singing.
Good afternoon, caller. Can I get your name for the attendance, please?
Yes. This group should be-
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, I can start with the public. Portion.
That's what you're ready.
Who's not? I know.
Yeah.
But some of them don't want. Okay.
They can. They actually can. And
Figure this out. Oh, yep. Because the public's doing that. Speaking of
the application.
it,
Yeah.
maybe I should mention. Maybe I should mention. Just ask the public want to speak. I think that's better. Just because there's a crowd that's here. You ready? Are you guys ready? Well, you can. Got it. Am I speaking now? I can hear myself. Yes, I had, Nicole, but Yolanda, it's still doing it. I know how to fix it now. I can hear myself. No, so I gotta do the same thing as I did before. I didn't touch that. That's what.
Don't forget this.
Yes. Okay.
There you are.
Well, I am now, because I can't hear. You ready to go? I think we can do that later. Okay. Your big smile.
I didn't say anything. I just told him that before we started.
Okay, I think we're ready to get. Hear me? Yeah, I do.
Let's see.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome to our planning meeting tonight, May 23rd. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:05. And first of all, we'll have our territorial land acknowledgement. Before our meeting gets underway, I would like to formally recognize the traditional keepers of this land and specifically our neighbors of the Alderville First Nation with a formal territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the township of Alma-Culdeman is located on the Mississaugan-Ashanimbic territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississaugan-Ashanimbic. The township of Alma-Culdeman respectively acknowledges that the Mississaugan Nation are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and the integrity for generations to come. Now, item 3, I'll ask members of council for disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, that'll be recorded. Approval of the agenda as circulated. The municipal planning meeting agenda for Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. Be it resolved that the municipal planning meeting agenda of May 23rd, 2023 be circulated and approved as provided. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Ainsworth, seconded by Deputy Mayor Stover. All in favor? Motion is carried. Next, we're going to move on to item 5, the municipal planning meeting minutes of Tuesday, April 25th, 2023. Be it resolved that the municipal planning meeting minutes of Tuesday, April 25th, 2023 be approved. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Booth, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Any discussions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Next is item 6, motion to adjourn to a land division committee or a committee of adjustment meeting. Be it resolved, the council of the township of Alma-Culdeman being a land division committee of adjustment adjourned to the land division committee or committee of adjustment meeting for the purposes of hearing a consent application at 6:10 p.m. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. All in favor? Motion is carried. Next, we have item 7, consent application from Brad Boise, AH08 2023, concession 1, part of lot 14, geographically in Haldeman, and this is for creation of a new rural residential lot. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Certainly, through you, Mayor Logo. This application AH08 2023 by Brad Boise is for the severance of a vacant rural residential lot in the township of Alma-Culdeman. It's located on Skyview, has frontage on Skyview Road and Shelter Valley Road. It's located directly south of Highway 401. The proposed severed lot would have an area of 1.99 hectares, and the retained lot would have about approximately 1.56 hectares. The retained lot is developed with a single detached dwelling. There was a previous severance from this property approximately 2 or 3 years ago, and at that time a lot was severed off of the southwest corner of the property. A house has subsequently been constructed on that lot. The subject property is partially cleared with some areas covered with relatively dense forest. Highway 401 forms the northern property boundary, and a heavily forested area creates thick visual screen between the existing single detached dwelling and Highway 401. Shelter Valley Creek is located on the west side of Shelter Valley Road, and the subject property is not regulated by Lower Trent Conservation. The valley lands associated with Shelter Valley Creek generally remain in a natural state in this area with trees and vegetation surrounding the creek. Surrounding land uses are a combination of rural residential, and agricultural uses. There are no livestock facilities that were identified within 750 meters of the subject property. It was in 2019 that the applicant applied for and received approval of a 0.46 hectare vacant rural residential property, which has subsequently been developed. The property is designated rural in the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman official plan, and under the provincial policy statement, the rural policies apply. And severances are permitted in the rural designation and rural areas where it is locally appropriate development and compatible with the surrounding land uses. The proposed severed parcel has frontage on both Skyview and Shelter Valley Road, while the proposed retained parcel will have frontage only on Skyview Road. The proposed severance constitutes locally appropriate development, which is permitted under the policies of the provincial policy statement. Under the PPS, compliance with minimum distance separation requirements is mandated, and it's also mandated by the township's official plan. Based on a site inspection and a review of aerial photographs, there appear to be no livestock facilities identified within 750 meters, and an MDS calculation was not required. There are no natural heritage or hazard features identified on the subject property. Shelter Valley Creek is located within 120 meters of the subject property, and that feature is considered a key hydrologic feature under the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And ordinarily, a hydrologic evaluation would be required prior to any development within 120 meters of a key hydrologic feature. However, in this case, Shelter Valley Road divides Shelter Valley from the subject property, and as the municipality has done in numerous other cases where the hydrologic feature is separated from the proposed severed lot, a hydrologic assessment is not required. In their April 21st, 2023 comments, Lower Trent commented that while floodplain mapping has not been prepared for this section of Shelter Valley Creek based on their review of the watercourse characteristics and distance from the proposed severed lot, they have no flooding concerns at this time. Northumberland County reviewed the application and concluded that the application is consistent with the PPS as it represents limited residential use in a rural area. Further, county comments state that new lots may be allowed in rural areas and site-specific locations with approved zoning or land use designation that allows development. Since the property abuts the Highway 401 corridor, the application was circulated to the Ministry of Transportation, who responded that they have no concerns with the proposed severance. However, they do require that access to the proposed severed lot be from Skyview Road as proposed. Because there's a Highway 401 sort of overpass over Shelter Valley Road, the MTO influence area is generally 400 meters from that intersection, so they can regulate all entrances and new roads within that area. So that's how they could prevent an access, because an MTO permit would be required, and they're saying that they wouldn't permit it. They want the entrance off of Skyview Road.
Thank you.
The subject property is not located on the Oak Ridges Moraine, so the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan doesn't apply. In the Northumberland County official plan, the lands are designated rural, and the rural designation is intended for agricultural, rural housing, woodlots, industrial, and commercial uses, and that are appropriate in the rural area. Northumberland County indicates that the creation of lots is governed by the policies of the local official plan and recognizes that growth or a severance would be permitted in this area. So the application conforms to the provincial policy statement and the county official plan, as well as the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. As I mentioned, the property is designated rural on Schedule A of the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman official plan. Policies for the rural designation are in section 510 of the OP, and the rural designation is applied to lands that are of marginal value for agriculture and have potential for non-agricultural development. Permitted uses in the rural designation do include residential lots such as that proposed. The proposed severance, it would be considered a non-farm residential use and is permitted. All new lots, as I mentioned earlier in the PPS section, are required to comply with the MDS or minimum distance separation calculation requirements, but there are no livestock barns identified within 750 meters of the proposed severed lot. Section 4 of the township official plan contains the land division policies. And the policies require new lots to have frontage on a year-round municipally maintained road. Both the severed and retained lots will have frontage on Skyview Road, which is a year-round municipally maintained road, and the severed lot will also have frontage on Shelter Valley Road. The PPS and the official plan both contain policies requiring lots to be appropriately sized to provide the requisite services. In this case, that's a private septic and private wells. The lots are appropriately sized to accommodate those services. The official plan policies permit a maximum of 2 lots from a rural property, which existed as of the 1st of January 1990. There's been 1 previous severance from this property, so this will be the 2nd severance and no additional severances would be permitted. So the proposed severance complies with the policies set forth in the Township of Alderman official plan and maintains the intent of the official plan. The subject property is zoned rural residential exception 5 in the Township of Alderman zoning bylaw 19-2019. The rural exception 5 zone permits a single detached dwelling on a 0.4 hectare property with a minimum lot frontage of 45 meters. The exception provision states that sections 4.33, 4.24, and 4.25 of the zoning bylaw containing special setbacks to pits, quarries, agricultural uses, and waste disposal areas do not apply to this property. That is a historic zone on this property that's on, and similar provisions are on many of our rural lots, and it's not exactly clear which of those 3 sections they were referring to. So basically the property is zoned rural residential. Because there is no livestock facilities, pits or quarries or waste disposal areas in that immediate area. So both the proposed severed and retained lots comply with the requirements of the rural residential zone. The application was circulated to the Township Public Works, Northumberland County, Lower Trent Conservation, Alderville First Nation, Bell Canada, and the Ministry of Transportation. The application was reviewed by the Manager of Public Works, who indicated that there is sufficient visibility for an entrance at a location to be approved by the Manager of Public Works. Lower Trent Conservation commented that they have no objection to the approval of the application. Northumberland County also reviewed the application and confirmed that the proposed severance complies with the county official plan. Because the property abuts 401, the application was circulated to MTO, who have no concerns. Notice of the application was circulated to all registered landowners within the 60 meters of the property on May 2nd, and a sign was posted that same day. An area resident attended the municipal office requesting additional information regarding the proposed severance and inquiring whether the proposed dwelling, where it would go and where the new entrance would be. Staff explained at that time that the applicant is not required to indicate the location of a future dwelling. At this point, that comes at the stage of a building permit application. And it was further explained that Public Works had reviewed the application and determined that there are sufficient sightlines for an entrance, and the ultimate location of an entrance would be determined by the Manager of Public Works. Since the time that the application the report was written, I have received 3 written comments that I'll read to council or the committee. The first one is, I am a resident of the Shelter Valley Road / Skyview Road neighborhood and object to the proposed severance, particularly when combined with the recent severance and construction 112 Skyview. The proposed variance does not seem to be minor. I was informed that 2 new houses are proposed for the severed lot and fear that many more lots may be severed in the Skyview Wicklow Road area that could significantly impact the area's green space, wildlife corridors, and potential farmland. I have received another one where the residents of 867 Wicklow Road, Grafton. We recently reviewed the above notice and have some concerns with the severance resulting in new home construction. Skyview Road is already in poor condition and not built for heavy machinery for months/years. We understand that there is no plan to pave Skyview due to naturally occurring springs beneath the road. We are concerned that the increased traffic and construction of more houses in this area may be problematic with this road due to the increased traffic and heavy machinery traffic needed for new home construction. When a new driveway was constructed in 2019, 2020 by the same party, Skyview Road was negatively impacted due to a change in water flow and runoff from the newly constructed driveway. The road sees a significant amount of water runoff during the spring runoff and in summer rainstorms and is at risk of washout already during the spring and summer months. Our concern is that with the increased traffic from heavy equipment and machinery, that the road will be negatively impacted even further. And I have one more letter. We are the residents of 111 Skyview Road, Grafton, Ontario. We recently received the above notice. We have some concerns with the severance and oppose it. Given the small number of existing properties on Skyview Road, the proposed variance is not minor in both size and impact. The 1.99 hectare severed lot is relatively large, and our understanding is that Mr. Boise plans to construct 2 houses on this lot, one for himself and a guest house for his parents, one in the south nearer to Skyview and one set back approximately 100 meters from Highway 401. At present, there are 5 houses within a 150-meter circle centered on Mr. Boise's current house on Skyview Road. 2 new houses would represent a 40% increase in the number of houses in this circle. Together with the previous 2019 severance and house construction by Mr. Boise on the western lot, the new severance will result in a 75% increase in the number of houses in the immediate Skyview Road neighborhood. This would not be a minor impact. This change is not desirable for the appropriate development of the site. We fear that this may create a precedent for several more severances, both on Skyview Road and Wicklow Road, such that the character of this quiet green corner will be lost. We also believe that in this location, it is undesirable to construct housing in close proximity to Highway 401. Mr. Boise purchased his property on Skyview Road in December 2011. We recall that in approximately early 2012, many trees were removed from the area that was subsequently severed in November 2019. This was directly across Skyview Road from our house and substantially reduced the neighborhood green space. We did not know at that time he intended to sever the property. When we moved to our Skyview Road home in December of 2007, we were informed by the Ministry of Natural Resources that the treed glade immediately on the west corner of our property was a conservation area, bird sanctuary. So we were puzzled and disappointed that so many trees were destroyed directly opposite Skyview Road. We believe that since 2012, many additional trees have been removed from the area of the proposed severance in order to facilitate Mr. Boise's ambitions for the property. We understand previously from the township that there is no plan to pave Skyview Road due to the presence of springs on both sides of the road and costs associated with this. We are concerned that building more houses in this area may be problematic with this road. Skyview Road is already in poor condition and is not built for heavy machinery to be going up and down the road constantly for one house to be built, then another, which could result in years of construction. Mr. Boise had to put a new driveway into his existing house, which further impacted Skyview Road. On 2 occasions during construction after Mr. Boise's last severance, we had to repair our road access and culvert area. We believe this was due to the increased road traffic and increased water draining onto the road. We anticipate that this will happen again if this severance is approved, resulting in further deterioration of Skyview Road. There was also constant dust and noise from early morning to late night, and none of the neighbors could keep their windows open and enjoy their homes in this quiet country neighborhood. The severance plan does not presently show the proposed new building locations, but it seems likely that these will be upslope from our property. We do not know where any new septic tank outflows will be located and fear that these may contaminate our groundwater, particularly as the above mentioned springs appear to flow near our well. Together with the 2019 severance and the proposed severance, there could be 3 extra septic beds in the close proximity to our property and water well. We depend on our well for drinking water. We believe that the proposed variance does not respect or reinforce the neighborhood's character. Both the previous severed lot and proposed severance directly overlook our property and reduce the privacy we sought by moving to this rural location. Based on those comments, I contacted the manager of Public Works with respect to the concerns about the status of Skyview Road, and Brian responded me today, just this afternoon. Public Works is planning on doing some road excavation to improve the base and surface condition on Skyview Road this fall, similar to what we did on Boyle Road last fall. We would wait till summer of 2024 to hard top this section of road, which I will be recommending to council in a 2024 budget. Have to find my place in my report. The proposed severed lot is located in a rural part of the municipality outside of the Oak Ridges Moraine with access via Skyview Road, a year-round municipally maintained road. Shelter Valley Creek is located on the west side of Shelter Valley Road, outside of the area of influence, and a hydrologic evaluation was not required. The application complies with the policies set forth in the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman official plan, is consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan for the Golden Horseshoe. My recommendation is that the application be approved subject to the conditions listed in the report.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions or comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Mayor Logo. I had the opportunity to have a guided tour of this property, so it's helpful when looking at this, and there is quite a large slope, and the owners of the property are well aware of that and are looking at means to keep the slope in place. And for now, their first build would be a small house closest to the road. So it is a nice piece of property. It's a big property, so I would support it.
Thank you. Councillor Ainsworth?
Through you, Mayor Lobo. Jennifer, clarification on the 401 and the MTO, because the 401 is coming through and making it wider. Will we have to revisit this later on?
No, the municipality won't have to revisit this later. If during the period, there's two things at play here. One is the MTO study that's looking at taking land, constructing for 6 lanes and planning for 8 lanes through this section from Coburg all the way through to Colbert. So they're looking at land requirements for that. So during that time, when they get to construction, there may be need for expropriation of a sliver of land that doesn't go through the municipality. And the other thing is that an MTO land use permit will be required when they go to construct a dwelling on this property. So when they go to get a building permit, MTO will be reviewing the building permit in light of the proposed expansion of the 401 also.
Thank you.
Other members of council, any questions or comments? Mary Catherine?
They're not what we're dealing with. But what happens?
Are you speaking in, please?
A building permit application is not a public application. A building permit application, provided it complies with zoning, setbacks, MTO permits, and any other permits they're required to have, then there is no public input. You don't get to have it, but there's no public input to the design or size or style of somebody's dwelling.
Well, I was thinking.
Yeah.
The location.
Oh, the location. Yeah.
Those, which are unused.
Yeah. Provided provided they comply with the zoning setbacks, that is fine. But as part of the building permit process, a lot grading plan prepared by either an OLS or a PN, professional engineer, is required for any building that is going to be located within 30 meters or 100 feet of a property line. So depending on the location of that new structure, if it's towards the south end of the structure, chances are a land use or a grading plan will be required because it would be within the 30 meters. Sorry.
Go ahead.
There were concerns about the number of lots that were created within an area. And all I can say is that the official plan policies do allow for this lot creation. It does comply with those. The lot is big enough, and it's permitted under the policies of both the official plan for the township and the county, as well as the provincial policy statement.
Thank you. Jennifer, you mentioned you know what I'm trying to say.
Hydrologic evaluation.
That's exactly what I was wanting to say.
Yes. Now, Shelter Valley Creek is located on the west side of Shelter Valley Road here. So the 120-meter influence area for Shelter Valley Creek does encroach onto the subject property. However, a hydrologic evaluation isn't required because the road bisects the subject property from Shelter Valley Creek. And the purpose of a hydrologic evaluation is to look at the intervening lands between a proposed new lot or development and the sensitive land use or the key hydrologic feature. And in this case, and in most cases, it requires the maintenance of a minimum vegetation protection zone, and usually it's 30 meters. But in this case, there's no way that the applicant can provide a 30-meter minimum vegetation protection zone because the road separates the subject property from the hydrologic feature.
Thank you. My second question was regarding septic bids. And I would think that there has to be a requirement approved by the plumbing group.
Yes, septic systems are approved by Northumberland County through their inspection services department. An applicant has to prepare a septic design. Well, not the applicant, they have to hire a qualified septic designer to prepare the plan, and it is reviewed, and septic permits are issued by Northumberland County.
And without a septic approval, you can't build a house.
That is correct.
Thank you. Any other further questions or comments regarding this application? Okay. Yes. Are there any members of the public here that would like to address this application?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi. I'm
Um,
Carrie McGinnis. I live across the road at 111 Skyview.
And what's your name, please?
Carrie McGinnis.
Thank you. Go ahead.
We are one of the ones that wrote a letter. We're at 111 Skyview Road. And I just noticed that every time Mr. Voicy he moved in 2011, cleared a lot of trees out. And there was the noise from the highway got louder and louder. And the second set, when he did the first severance, the noise again got louder and louder. And he has cleared a lot more trees out. And I'm wondering if you could do a noise study about all this.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the very last portion of that comment.
I'm wondering if a noise study could be done for this. Because
Thank
we
you.
do live in the country and all we hear now is the highway because of all the severance and the clearing of the trees constantly.
Thank you. Jennifer, you want to comment on that?
If council would like to defer the application pending the completion of a noise evaluation. I guess that is an option. The municipality doesn't have a tree cutting bylaw. The township doesn't have a tree cutting bylaw. There's nothing that would prevent somebody from cutting trees down on their property, regardless of whether they have a severance application, except for the Northumberland County tree bylaw. There is the Northumberland County tree bylaw. There would, from a municipal perspective, there would be nothing to prevent Mr. Voicy from cutting trees down, even if he didn't sever this parcel at this point in time. Northumberland County did mention in their comments about a noise study, but that wasn't intended for adjacent landowners. There's a series of D guidelines that are provincial guidelines, and they do speak to areas where you can have, where you may require a noise study at the requirement of the municipality, and those have to do with instigators of large volumes of noise, which would be Highway 401. And it's looking more at the impact of 401 on a lot to be created on the subject property, as opposed to adjacent properties. Adjacent properties already exist. They've been there, notwithstanding the fact that there have been trees cleared from Mr. Voicy's property. So it's not a recommendation that I would ordinarily put in place for an application like this.
Thank you. Mr. Voicy, I believe you have made a request to have us to speak as well.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, yeah, no, I didn't request, but I can comment for sure. Since I've moved in, the trees across from 111 Skyview were actually removed before I moved in there, a lot of them by a previous owner. I cleaned the area up. There was a lot of saplings, poplars, just weed trees that we cleaned up for the construction of 112 Skyview Road. It's an unfortunate circumstance that we're in. My intention was never to sever this, but it is what we're doing, and we're following all the guidelines. I don't plan on cutting down many more trees. The land that's there is the land that we plan to use. So as far as cutting trees down, I don't plan on cutting any more really down, just cleaning up the area that's there. And none will, I think, impact 111 Skyview. And I just plan on following all the rules that are set out. So I'm hoping that this can go forward. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Voicy.
Why am I on his?
Any further comments from council?
Pardon?
You want to make your recommendations? Jennifer, do you want to go ahead and give us your recommendation?
Certainly, through you, Mayor Logal. The recommendation is that application AH082023 by Brad Voicy to sever a parcel of land for the creation of a new rural residential lot in part of Lot 14, Concession 1, Geographic Haldeman, is hereby approved subject to the following conditions. 1, that a registered survey for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 2, further to the printed plan of survey, a closed polygon vector file of the part boundaries shown on the reference plan is to be provided in spatially referenced Autodesk DWG Windows readable format to the satisfaction of the township. It is recommended that the applicant's Ontario land surveyor consult with the County of Northumberland GIS section to confirm acceptable standards and formatting. 3, that a draft transfer for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 4, that the tax account for the subject property be paid up to date. 5, that the $11,813.38 development charge for the severed lot be paid to the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman. And 6, that the $1,500 cash in lieu of parkland fee be paid to the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman.
That's it.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Okay, I need a motion from council to accept the report and approve this application. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor Booth. Is there any further comments? Seeing none, call a vote. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to number 8, and this is a motion to reconvene to the municipal planning meeting. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Allen-McAlderman, being the Land Division Committee or Committee of Adjustments, reconvene to the municipal planning meeting at 6:40 p.m. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Ainsworth, second by Councillor O'Neill. All in favor? That's carried. Next, we have a public meeting for zoning applications. And our first one is from Irina Piatek, Z05-2023, regarding bylaw 32-2023. This is for a concession 7 part lot of 21, geographically in Allenwick. Jennifer, go ahead, please.
Certainly, through you, Mayor Local. Application Z05-2023 applies to 1013 Merrill Road, located in part of Lot 21, Concession 7, Geographic Alnwick, owned by Irina Piatek. The application is required as a condition of consent. Application AH03-2023, which was conditionally approved by the Land Division Committee on February 23rd, 2023, and which resulted in the creation of a new vacant rural residential lot. The entire property has an area of about 18.4 hectares, and it's located in the northeast quadrant of the municipality. In February, Land Division Committee approved the severance of approximately 0.4. I think by the time it was actually done, it was about 0.6, because a little lot addition had to be done at the front to allow for sufficient frontage to accommodate a safe access to the property. The lands that are going to be rezoned have frontage on Merrill Road, year-round municipally maintained road. At the time that the consent was granted, the consent was deemed to be consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. There are 3 livestock barns in the immediate area. MDS calculations were prepared for those 3 barns, and the severed lot, or the conditionally approved severed lot, is located outside of the required MDS setbacks from those livestock facilities. This property also has frontage on Rice Lake, which is a key hydrologic feature. There are some wetland features also on the northern portion of the property. Those lands are quite removed from the area where the proposed severed lot is located, and hydrologic evaluations were not required. There are no natural heritage features or natural hazard features on the lands that are going to be subject to the rezoning. The property is not located on the Oak Ridges Moraine, so the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan doesn't apply. The consent and the subsequent rezoning are consistent with the policies of the county official plan. As I mentioned earlier, the consent application went through a thorough review at the time it was granted in February, and the application is consistent with the land division policies contained in the official plan. There has been one previous severance from this property since January 1st, 1990. This will be the second, which means that no additional severances will be permitted. So the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, which will facilitate the finalization of consent application AH03-2023, complies with the policies set forth in the township's official plan. Right now, the subject property is zoned rural and environmentally sensitive areas on Schedule A to the township's zoning bylaw. And the area of the severed lot is zoned rural. The rural zone provisions allow for a variety of uses, but it does contain a minimum lot size of 5 hectares. And the proposed, there it is, 6.8 hectare severed lot is smaller than that required. As such, the lot has to be rezoned to the rural residential zone in order to permit the construction of a single detached dwelling. The application was circulated to a number of agencies, and I only received comments back from Public Works. who responded that the applicant will have to apply for an entrance permit for the existing field entrance on the retained parcel, and further that the existing field entrance has to be improved with the installation of a 9 meter by 450 millimeter culvert to the satisfaction of manager of public works. That was required as a condition of consent. Lower Trent had no objection to this application, and Northumberland County had no objection to this application. Public notice was given on May 2nd to all registered landowners within 120 meters of the subject property. A sign was posted on the property that same day. No public comments have been received. So the conditionally approved severed lot, it's located in a rural area of the municipality outside the Oak Ridges Moraine. There are no natural heritage features or natural hazard features on the subject property, on the proposed severed lot. The application is required as a condition of consent application 03/2023. It's consistent with the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan, and maintains the intent of the Township of Alderman official plan. The recommendation is that the zoning bylaw amendment application be approved.
Thank you, Jennifer. Questions or comments from council? Go ahead, Greg.
Through you, your worship, to Jennifer. Jennifer, the condition of consent for the field entrance, when does that have to be done with the culvert?
Through you, Mayor Logo, that condition has to be fulfilled prior to a certificate of official being issued for the severance. So prior to the severance being finalized, they have 2 years to fulfill a condition of consent.
Okay, thank you.
And that's 2 years from the day that the notice of decision for this severance was granted. Yes, February.
Any other questions or comments? Is the applicant here? Seeing, I don't believe they are. Does anybody else have any, this is a public meeting, so anybody else that have a question or comments, you're invited to do so now. Seeing none, I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that the application Z05/2023 to amend the zoning on parcels of land owned by Irina Piatek, legally described as part of Lot 21, Concession 7, geographically in the Township of Elmwood, from the rural RU zone to the rural residential RR zone in the Township of Elmwood, Calderman, zoning bylaw 19/2019, as amended, be approved. And further, that a bylaw will be passed later this meeting. Can I get a move in a seconder for that? Moved by Councilor Ainsworth, seconded by Deputy Mayor Stover. Any further discussions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Our next application is for Wilfred Venema and Sarah Venema. The agent is Kyle Venema. The application is Z06/2023 regarding bylaw 51/2023 on concession 3, part of lot 13, geographically in Haldeman. Jennifer, you want to take us through this, please?
Certainly, through you, Mayor Logo. Application Z06/2023 applies to 589 Pipeline Road, located in part of lot 13, concession 3, geographic Haldeman. This application is required as a condition of consent application AH05/2023, which was conditionally approved by the Land Division Committee on February 23rd, 2023. This application, or the severance application, resulted in the creation of a lot that was to be used. It was a rural lot. It was an undersized rural lot because there is a hatchery on the property right now. They severed off a parcel of land and they wanted to build a dwelling on the same lot as the hatchery. Now, the hatchery would be considered an agricultural use, but the proposed lot that they created was not 5 hectares, which is the minimum lot area for the rural zone. The lot that they actually created was 1.2 hectares. 1.23 hectares, which is smaller than the 5 hectares required. As such, the property needs to be rezoned to a rural exception. It's rural exception 152, which will permit all of the rural uses on the property and allow for a minimum lot size of 1.2 hectares. A hatchery is considered an agricultural use and it would be permitted. At the time that the application was submitted and reviewed by Land Division and a decision was made, it was determined that the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, Northumberland County official plan, the township's official plan, and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The severed lot is located within 120 meters of a water course, and the applicants were required to complete a hydrologic evaluation, which they did do. The results of that hydrologic evaluation recommended that a minimum vegetation protection zone of 30 meters be rezoned to the environmental protection zone to ensure that it's protected. So with this application, you'll see on the schedule, I believe it's attached to the report. Sorry, it's not. I have a key map on here. It will be included in the zoning bylaw amendment. The portion of the lands will be rezoned to environmental protection to protect those lands as identified in the hydrologic evaluation. So the application is consistent. This application, which will rezone the subject lands to permit a dwelling on the lot, is consistent with the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and the township's official plan and county official plan. I apologize. I don't have a copy of the zoning bylaw amendment schedule with me, or it will be included in your agenda as part of bylaw 51, 2023, and that will illustrate the lands that are to be rezoned to the environmental protection zone. So the recommendation is that the application be approved.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions or comments from council? Is there a member of the Bedema family here tonight? Go ahead, Mayor Catherine.
Through you, Mary. So if this is a rural exception, that's allowing the hatchery for as long as these owners have, is that what that means?
Or subsequent, the
So
zone,
it would carry forward.
yes, it's the zoning goes with the property. It doesn't go with a person.
Are there any members of the gallery that would like to speak to this application? Seeing none, I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that application Z06-2023 to amend the zoning on parcels of land owned by Wilfred and Sarah Venema, legally described as part of Lot 13, Concession 3, geographically Township of Haldeman, from the rural RU zone to the rural exception 152, RU-152 zone, and the environmental protection EP zone in the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman zoning bylaw 19/2019 as amended be approved. And further, that a bylaw will be passed later this meeting. Can I get a mover and a second for that? Moved by Mary Catherine and seconded by Councillor Booth. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Next, we have an application from Jean and John Wilson. The application number is Z07-2023, bylaw 52-2023, concession 1, part of lot 23, geographically in Haldeman. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Through you, Mayor Logal. This is a different type of application that we don't see very often in the municipality. It's an application for a temporary use bylaw to allow a garden suite to be used for a period of 10 years on a property. The Planning Act contains provisions that allow for a temporary use bylaw to be passed by a municipality. It's under the section of the same section as zoning bylaws, and the temporary use bylaw for a garden suite can be used for up to 10 years. The purpose of that is to allow for a non-permanent or temporary building to be used to house people relatives on a property. The olden terms used to be to allow for elder people to be used, or people that they need, that need care and help from relatives on the property. It's kind of dated, because now the Planning Act also allows for secondary dwelling units on a property, and there's no requirement about who needs to stay in them and that sort of thing. But the garden suites provisions still apply. And there was previously a temporary use bylaw passed for this same unit that's going to be used in this case on the property. Under the provisions of the Planning Act, they allow a municipality to enter into an agreement, and the agreement specifies who's going to be living in it, and when they cease to live in it anymore, it contains provisions regarding when it has to be removed, that sort of thing. The previous temporary use bylaw expired on June 22nd, 2021. And this was during whole COVID thing and everything else. So it's a mobile home, and the mobile home was not removed. Since that time, there's been a change in family structure on the property, or with the property. And Mr. and Mrs. Wilson are going to be living in the garden suite. So the property is located on the south side of Cranberry Lake Road. It's a 12.2 hectare property. It's north of Highway 401 and on the west side of County Road 23. Cranberry Lake forms the eastern property boundary of the property. And the property is heavily forested with the exception of a cleared area. And in the cleared area, that's where they have the mobile home, an existing dwelling, a barn, and I believe there is a man-made pond on the property also. The pond appears to be fed from a water course that traverses the subject property. And surrounding land uses are predominantly large rural parcels, and there have been, I think, about 6 rural residential lots that have been created along both sides of Cranberry Lake Road. This property is also within the wellhead protection area of the Grafton drinking water supply, and as such, they were required to get a Section 59 notice under the source protection plan, and that we have that notice. We've received it from Lower Trent Conservation, who is the RMO sorry, it's not the risk management official, from the Trent Source Protection, who administers the Trent Source Protection Plan on behalf of the municipality. So we do have that clearance notice from them. So the application, it's consistent with provincial policy, which allows for garden suites. A great deal of the property is regulated by the Conservation Authority. However, the Conservation Authority has given all the clearances that we need. This is an existing mobile home, and there will be no new development within a regulated area at all. The Planning Act and the provincial policy statement both contain policies and provisions that encourage municipalities to provide a broad range of housing alternatives. And this is one of those broad ranges of housing alternatives that they allow a municipality to permit within their jurisdiction. So the proposal is to not extend because the previous temporary use bylaw expired, to pass a new temporary use bylaw for a period of 10 years, allowing the garden suite to be used, and requiring the Wilsons to enter into an agreement with the municipality, spelling out who's going to be living in it and how it will be removed from the property. And the reason it has to be removed from the property at the expiration of the temporary use agreement is because it is a mobile home, and mobile homes are not intended to stay permanently in an area within the municipality. So the recommendation is that the application be approved to allow for a temporary use bylaw, and that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to sign the temporary use agreement our garden suite agreement on behalf of the municipality. I am losing my words right now.
Have a drink.
I will.
Are there any comments from council? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Mayor Lobo. I'm just wondering, I was looking on page 47 of the agenda. And the Northumberland County official plan allows for temporary occupancy of garden suites for up to 20 years. So this will be, well, I guess what I'm getting at in what is the year? 2033. I know Mr. and Mrs. Wilson are going to be still in good shape. Can they get an extension for another 10 years at that time?
I believe that the provisions under the Planning Act allow you to extend it for up to future extensions for up to 3 years at a time. When the Wilsons came in with this application, we also discussed secondary dwelling units on their property. And I think they are perhaps intending to pursue that in the future. I'm not sure. That was under discussion at the time, whether they're going to proceed with this at this time and then go on with the secondary dwelling unit. It's just a matter of timing and that sort of thing.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? I believe Mrs. Wilson is here tonight. Would you like to address your request? You're more than welcome to.
But just want to say thanks to council for considering this. We in a hurry went from 2 people living in our house to 6 people living in our house. So John and I are looking forward to our house.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Is there any other neighbors or anybody else who would like to comment? Seeing none, I'll read the recommendation or resolution. Be it resolved that application Z07 2023 to permit the use of a garden suite as a temporary use for a period of 10 years on parcels of land owned by Jean and John Wilson, legally described as part of Lot 23, Concession 1, geographically Township of Haldeman in the Township of Elmwood Haldeman, zoning by Law 19/2019 as amended, and further that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to sign a garden suite agreement on behalf of the township be approved. And further that a bylaw will be passed later this meeting. Mover and seconder, moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Further discussion? All in favor? That motion is carried. Next, we're going to move on to item 10, business arising from the previous minutes. Any comments from council? Seeing none. Thank you. Next is communications. And we have correspondence received from the Trent Conservation Coalition Source Protection Region dated May 1st, 2023 regarding pre-consultation for amendments to the assessment reports and source protection plans. Be it resolved that the correspondence received from the Trent Conservation Coalition Source Protection Region dated May 1st, 2023 regarding pre-consultation for amendments to the assessment reports and source protection plans be received. And further that, and council is to make a decision on that. But I'm going to open it up, or a mover and a seconder first. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover and seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Are there any discussions? Go ahead, Mary Catherine.
There's a couple of new items in there. I believe they're new anyway, about the fuel tanks. So that's brand new, is it? That there is no existing information on the location of these fuel tanks? I have it on page 59.
59, thank you.
The above grade fuel tanks. Page 59 is the agenda package. More than 250 liters, so I think that would be most of creative fuel.
Yes. I think I believe, to answer your initial question, there are some regulations to start with, I believe.
Yeah.
And, but they have been changed so that instead of doing it, no less than 5 years, it's to change to no greater than every 5 years. Is one thing that I noticed. But does that answer your question or?
I just didn't know how that was gonna roll out, but.
Oh,
apparently
okay.
it's the First time everyone here is seeing it, so.
Sorry, through you, Mayor Local, the risk manage, our wellhead protection area is a pretty small area within the municipality. We don't have a great number of properties within that. And the number of potential threats is actually quite small. So it doesn't apply to all fuel tanks within the municipality. It only applies to those fuel tanks within the source protection, wellhead protection area, where they have to do a risk management plan for all of the threats within that area. So it's not all the municipality, no.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, do we currently have a salt management plan? Might be saved for our public works.
Yeah, I think this is again with what Jennifer's saying, it has to be within the well water protection area. However, we do have roads in that area that we should probably be checking with the public works to make sure that we are meeting those requirements. So we might want to make sure that, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? The only question I had, and it was mentioned several times through there, they mentioned prescribed instruments without being specific as to what that is. So do you have any idea what that is?
Prescribed instruments, this is with respect to the source protection
Yes.
plan and okay, prescribed instruments are specific details regarding it's kind of a legalese kind of term. Pat, you want to help me with this one? Prescribed instruments. I don't know how to explain a prescribed instrument.
I got it from the impression it wasn't actually a physical piece.
No, it's not a physical,
it's-
it's a piece of documentation.
Documentation
It's documentation. It's,
that you have to follow these
Yes.
prescribed.
yes, it's
Language.
not a physical piece of anything. It's a process and a policy. And I believe that there are specific registrations and that sort of thing, but it's not a tangible something you can hold in your hands.
Okay. Doesn't tell you anything as far as instruments go. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any further questions or comments on this? Okay, I would expect that. Be it resolved that the correspondence received from Rhonda Bateman, CAO Lower Trent Conservation dated May 11th, 2023. Oh, wait a minute, I'm reading it too much. I've got the next one, haven't I? Okay. Okay, thank. Yes. Be resolved that the correspondence received from the Trent Conservation Coalition Source Protection Region dated May 1st, 2023 regarding consultation for amendments to the asset reports and source protection plans be received, and further that council receive and file or support, or that's probably better, support the changes as prescribed from them. Did I get a mover and a seconder for that? Oh, I did have. Thank you. All in favor? That motion is carried. Next, we have correspondence received from Rhonda Bateman, the CAO of the Lower Trent Conservation, dated May 11th, 2023, regarding the levy and Bill 23. As discussed at the May 11th Lower Trent Conservation Board meeting. The changes in Bill 23 affect the natural heritage review that was paid for by the proponents, not in the municipal levy. Our planning comments on natural hazards and wetlands are still active, and that is the aspect paid for by the levy. Our review are thorough, and the planning files are still required to move through the Conservation Authority. The natural heritage portion of the reviews were often not present. The workload continues. Ultimately, these changes are increasing the cost to the developers and municipalities for necessary peer review. I'm going to read the resolution. I'm sure there's going to be some discussion. Be it resolved that the correspondence received from Rhonda Bateman, CAO, Lower Trent Conservation, dated May 11th, 2023, regarding the levy and Bill 23 be received and filed. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Ainsworth, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Ainsworth, do you have any comments on this?
Through you, Mayor Lobo. No, just to reiterate, like where this come from is because of Bill 23 and all the changes that went through, and with direction from council to ask the question about this. So I mean, this was the reply, and you know, it looks like it seems like we're going to get busier. So I don't know in the future if that levy is going to increase or stay the same at this point.
I guess for the benefit of the gallery, we were thinking because of Bill 23, which it does have some changes to the provincial policy statement and some of the things that that we were getting done before we thought we could save us some money, and we were looking for some savings out of the 2024 budget. But the Lower Trent, who Mike sits on, has responded back saying basically the things that they're not going to do anymore will have no effect on the municipality, because the stuff that we still have to have still must be paid for, and we don't have any choice in that. So we've got a mover and a seconder.
Mayor Local, could I just add to that?
Oh, thank you.
Through you, Mayor Local. As well, I think I mentioned in the last, one of the past previous meetings, it's the same with Ganaraska that I sit on. The levy's not going to change.
Okay.
There, it's would be the status quo if not increase.
Yeah, and again, and she's referring to the Ganaraska Conservation Authority. So basically, the two of them have responded with the same answer.
Basically.
So we moved in second. Any further comments? All in favor? Carried. Now we're going on to bylaws. Bylaw number. Oh no, we're not. Where are we? Okay, we got something else after that then yet. Okay, bylaws. Bylaw number 32, 2023, being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 19, 2019, as amended, of the Township of Elmwick Haldeman for Irina Payatek, concession 7, part of lot 21, geographically in Haldeman. Be resolved that bylaw number 32, 2023, being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 19, 2019, as amended, of the Township of Elmwick Haldeman for Irina Payatek, concession 7, part of lot 21, geographically in Elmwick, be read and deemed to be passed this 23rd day of May 2023. Could I get a mover in a second for this one? Moved by Councillor Booth, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Any discussion from council? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Next, we have bylaw number 51, 2023, being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 19, 2019, as amended, of the Township of Elmwick Haldeman for Wilfred Venema and Sarah Venema, the agent Kyle Venema, concession 3, part of lot 13, geographically in Haldeman. Be it resolved that bylaw number 51, 2023, being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 19, 2019, as amended of the Township of Elmwick, Haldeman for Wilfred Venema and Sarah Venema, agent Kyle Venema, concession 3, part of lot 13, geographically Haldeman, be read and deemed to be passed this 23rd day of May, 2023. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor Booth. Further discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Next, we have bylaw 52, 2023, being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 19, 2019, as amended of the Township of Elmwick, Haldeman for Jean and John Wilson, concession 1, part of lot 23, geographically in Haldeman. Be it resolved that bylaw number 52, 2023, being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 19, 2019, as amended of the Township of Elmwick, Haldeman for Jean and John Wilson, concession 1, part of lot 23, geographically in Haldeman, be read and deemed to be passed this 23rd day of May, 2023. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Further discussion? All in favor? That motion is carried. Bylaw 57, 2023, being a bylaw to authorize the signing and execution of an agreement between the Corporation of the Township of Elmwick, Haldeman and Jean and John Wilson. Temporary use, Granny Suite. Be it resolved that the bylaw 57, 2023, being a bylaw to authorize the signing and execution of an agreement between the Corporation of the Township of Elmwick, Haldeman and Jean and John Wilson, temporary use, Granny Suite, be read and deemed to be passed by council this 23rd day of May, 2023. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Deputy Mayor Stover. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Next, we have bylaw 56, 2023, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 46, 2023, be a bylaw to provide for the levy and payment of taxes and the adoption of the tax rate for 2023. Be it resolved that bylaw number 56, 2023, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 46, 2023, being a bylaw to provide for the levy and payment of taxes and the adoption of the tax rate for 2023, be read and deemed to be passed by council this 23rd day of May, 2023. Could I get a mover in a second for this one? Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Are there any discussions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Next, we have a planning report. A report from Jennifer Current, Senior Planner, dated May 23rd, 2023, regarding New Danforth subdivision. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Through you, Mayor Logo. The Northumberland County and the Township of Elmwick, Haldeman have received an application for the development of a 65 lot residential subdivision accommodating 65 single detached dwelling, 2 stormwater management facilities, a parkland block, and an environmental protection area. This development is located on the south side of County Road 2 in the settlement area of Grafton. There will be an internal road network connecting County Road 2 to Danforth, Old Danforth Road, and a proposed development immediately west of this development. Lots would be serviced by municipal water and individual private septic systems. The subdivision design provides a 1.23 hectare block, that parkland block that's located in the center of the municipality, adjacent to the environmental protection lands and the water course that traverses the subject lands. A very thorough planning report was prepared in support of this application by RFA Planning Consultants, and I attached that planning report to the applicant, to my report, rather than regurgitate everything that she said in her report. It was already there. It's a very thorough planning report. So it's there for council's review. And a copy of the proposed draft plan of subdivision was also attached to the report as attachment A. So the property is approximately 20, well, it's not approximately, they gave me the exact numbers. It's 27.14 hectares. As I mentioned, it's located in the settlement area of Grafton. The property was previously farmed and a livestock barn and other farm buildings have been demolished. There's a water course that traverses the subject property, and the internal road network contains a water course crossing. In July of 2022, the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman received an application for draft plan approval of an 11-lot subdivision immediately west of this property. And both draft plan applications contain an internal road connection that meet up. So it provides for one contiguous road network throughout and a consistent allows for connectivity between the neighborhoods. So it once developed, it will appear as if it's one neighborhood instead of two separate draft plan applications. Grafton is an established designated settlement area and is a focus of community facilities in the southern portion of the township. There are two elementary schools. There are several churches, the arena, there are recreational facilities and several commercial operations. So the application for draft plan approval is the first step in the approval of a residential development. They submit their application for draft plan approval when the application is submitted, it's accompanied by a fairly extensive list of technical documents. In this case, the application was submitted with a planning justification report, archaeological report, stages 1, 2, and 3, environmental impact study, a meander belt with assessment, flood hazard assessment, preliminary stormwater management, a functional servicing report, geotechnical investigation, hydrogeological assessment, traffic impact study, preliminary stormwater management report, and water level monitoring report. So all of that information was received along with the application. And once all of that information has been reviewed and the municipality has retained an engineering firm to undertake peer reviews of the functional servicing report, the stormwater management report, the traffic impact study on behalf of the municipality and provide us with their professional comments. So we have the application for draft plan approval, and that's the first step. And once it's approved, it's sort of like a consent, but a really, really big consent, because they get a notice of decision, and their decision contains pages of conditions that have to be fulfilled before they can get final approval of the development. So this is stage 1. It's the stage where we say, yes, generally this works. We don't need all of the details on exactly how it's going to work, but we know that it is possible. And then once it's granted draft approval, that's when they go through the detailed design component, and their engineers do the detailed design, the grading, the road slopes, everything in that. They prepare their M plans, which is the same, sort of like a registered reference plan for a survey. For a subdivision, they do an M plan. So right now we're going through the review stage, and this is council's very first look at this. So it was just sort of to introduce you to what we have in front of us. Now I've undertaken a peer review with a planning consultant who will look at the technical documents. Under the Planning Act, they recently changed the Planning Act, and there's no longer a requirement for a public meeting for a plan of subdivision. There's public notification and public circulation, and public can provide their comments through that avenue. But there's no longer a requirement to host a public meeting like we have in the past for plans of subdivision. And this, one of the purposes of this report is to get council's input. It would be my recommendation that we just do the circulation as required by the Planning Act now and not do a formal public meeting. they tend to be meetings where people get up and just one after the other repeat the same things. So if public comments are still solicited through written form and emails and consultations with municipal staff, but it's not in the public forum, so it's not required. So my recommendation would be that we do what the Planning Act says, your circulation within 120 meters, and we solicit their public comments are open for a period of usually about 30 days. And then those comments are received because the county is the approval authority for subdivisions in our municipality. They'll be looking for an endorsement from council because they won't approve a plan of subdivision that the local municipality hasn't endorsed. So my recommendation would be that we proceed with the circulation under the Planning Act. However, sometimes council they want to have the public meeting, and that's fine. That is a perfectly viable option. We just require, because the county is going to be undertaking circulation soon, if council wants a public meeting, we need the details of that public meeting to publish in the notice that the county will be sending out. So this was sort of just here's what's happening. It's pretty big and it's pretty exciting. It looks like a really nice development. It does have, I don't know, some of you probably attended the public meeting that we had for the Danforth 60 subdivision, which is immediately to the west. That was the 11 lot subdivision. And there was a public meeting last year. And at that point in time, I said that I wasn't requiring, or that the municipality wasn't requiring a parkland block in that small subdivision, because the Planning Act allows you to take up, it's called a 5% park. 5% of the land can be, the municipality can require it for parkland purposes for a new development. But a 5% park in that previous subdivision wouldn't have given us very much. And this development I knew was coming along, and we were going to get a nice parkland block in it. So we recommended cash in lieu of parkland for the smaller subdivision to the west. So you can get cash that you can use to improve the parkland block that we're getting in this subdivision. So, and they're all joined by a road network. And if you looked at it, if you didn't have the property line going down the middle, you'd think it was one subdivision application. So I think it would lend itself to a very nice neighborhood in our municipality. We did have a preliminary discussion amongst staff regarding the application. And one of the things that we discussed was sidewalks, and the fact that I am a proponent of sidewalks in subdivisions in our settlement areas, and the manager of Public Works agreed. He likes to see subdivisions on the north side of the road, which I never really thought about, but if you put the sidewalks on the north side of the road, then the sun shines onto those and it melts easier than if you have it on the south sides in the shadow of the buildings. Apparently that's something that they look at. So that hadn't come to my mind as something under consideration, but that Brian did bring that up. So I'm just looking for council's direction with respect to how they want to proceed with public circulation on this application.
Thank you, Jennifer. I do have a couple questions before we get to that. This new Danforth has got 2 different phases, I believe. Or that's what they're suggesting, a north one and a south one.
There are 2 sections of it there, and they haven't given me any phasing plans with respect to it, but that could be a logical, or sometimes they may even break this down into more phases than the 2, but there are 2 areas. There's a south side and a north side. Yes.
Yeah, and the north one actually goes along with the Danforth 60, I believe.
That's correct.
Which would be probably the right thing to do. The other thing that I would like to ask you, you said this one, Danforth 60 is at stage 1. this is the process of stage one. Where would you say the Dan 460 is?
Danforth 60 is slightly ahead because we've had our public meeting, we've had our first submission of our peer review comments. We've sent all those back to the developer for them to address and respond, and then we're waiting for resubmission from them.
So it's probably in a stage two versus a stage one. Is that, can I say that or not?
I probably wouldn't put it that way. I'd probably just say that once we receive this application and it undergoes a peer review, they're going to almost be the same, because it's been quite a while since we've heard back from the Danforth 60 people regarding that development. I anticipate we should be hearing back from them shortly, but we haven't. It's been kind of quiet.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to read it unless you have a specific question. Go ahead, Joan.
I had a couple of questions. I think the size of this new development would warrant a public meeting,
Okay,
only because there are some.
can we bring the resolution
sure.
first
Yes.
and then you can start? It sounds like that's debate.
Not debate.
Well, opinion.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so this is be it resolved that the report from Jennifer Current, senior planner, dated May 23rd, 2023, regarding the new Danforth subdivision be received, and further that council decision is required. And basically what you're asking for is whether we should have a public meeting for it or not.
Whether council wants a public meeting, that's
Okay.
correct.
So could I get a mover and a second to bring this on the moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor Booth. And since you moved it, you have the first opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mayor Logal. I would say that this is a good development to have a public meeting. I have heard some different concerns, traffic being a big one, and I think it would alleviate some concerns of the neighboring residents around, just so they're aware of what is being proposed here. Because, and I do concur with our planner, Madam Planner. That was a very detailed report. I was very interested in the whole document. I read it word for word. So there are a few concerns that I have that I did read. One thing is I don't agree with not having a left turning lane, but that would all come through the planning meeting. But I think it's a prime development here, and it warrants a public meeting.
Thank you. Greg, do you have a comment?
Just to concur with the deputy mayor, I think this is fairly important. And the last time we had a public meeting, there was a lot of people here for that. So it gives them an opportunity to see exactly what we're seeing with drawings and things like that. So although it's not required, I still think it's a good idea that we host a public meeting for this.
Thank you. Mary Catherine or Mike, do you have any comments? Go ahead, Mary Catherine. Okay. Doesn't matter. Go ahead if you want to ask now.
Things, one, I concur about the sidewalks. I think it, and for both walking and biking and public safety, I think that's a great point that you raised. Also, won't be surprised, I want to know about opportunities for intensification. There's beautiful pictures of farmland, bales of hay in this that we're looking at. So if we're going to take farmland, and if we look on page 102, it does say that this can, from the hydrological point of view, accommodate up to 125 lots. So could we have more lots, or the use of multi-unit housing within it? Are those the kind of things that come up at a public meeting?
Yes, they can come up at the public meeting. Yes, for sure. Yes, the hydrogeology study did indicate that it could support more lots. When they first approached the municipality, the draft plan concept at that point in time had even fewer lots. And I said, oh, I thought there might be more. And then they came back with with this draft plan and it has more lots. So, that would be I'm not sure about multi-unit at this point in time. Whether,
Like, I was duplex project.
yeah, I'm not certain about that, Mary Catherine, sorry.
And does the county get involved in that type of decision? Or?
With
or not?
respect to the number of units,
Number or the density?
they would be looking for direction from the municipality. They are the approval authority, so
Okay.
yes. But with respect to density and that sort of thing, they'll be looking at the municipality as probably leading the charge on that.
Okay, thank you. Mike, do you have a question?
No, Mark.
I
Another
just
one?
had, yeah, through your mayor local. Seeing the area that this subdivision is going into it's relatively in prime green space. I'm just wondering if the developer is going to be looking at any green technology going forward to assist
Yeah.
with that.
And I think that's a very good question for the public meeting.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
maybe we'll decide whether we're gonna have a public meeting, and if we decide that, then that's a great time for you to ask that question. So we've got a mover and a seconder, and I believe it was moved by you, Joan.
Yes.
And you're asking for, I'm gonna read it over again, so we just make sure we're all the same. Be it resolved that the report from Jennifer Current, Senior Planner, dated May 23rd, 2023, regarding new Danforth subdivision be received and filed, and further that council requests that a public meeting be held for this application. How's that sound?
Perfect. Yep.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
Through you, Mayor Lobo, can I just ask for some clarification? I am assuming that council, given the nature of this, do you want a separate public meeting date rather than at a municipal planning meeting? Or do you want it as part of a municipal planning meeting?
I'd be happy at a regular
At a
meeting,
regular meeting? Okay,
providing that there's, not gonna be all night.
okay. I think that the June municipal planning meeting, we only have 2 applications at it, so it could very well be a good opportunity for the June municipal planning meeting then.
I would suggest that you plan on the June planning meeting, and we'll go from there.
Okay,
And
Thank you.
that's an evening meeting, right?
that
Yes.
is correct.
Thank you. We had the vote, everything else, so we're fine to go. We have a staff report, staff and committee reports, and we have a report from Pat Kemp, clerk, dated May 23rd, 2023, regarding the Association of Municipalities of Ontario Conference, August 20th to 23rd, 2023. Go ahead, Pat. Pretty simple.
Delegation at an equal conference, and that conference is being held August 20th to the 23rd, and I need to get the delegation requested.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to that that meeting. Is anybody else planning to go?
I hadn't.
Are there any things that you suggest, Madam Clerk, that we should be discussing with provincial representatives? When do you have to get back to this? Well, I would suggest then that if providing there's time available, I think our next meeting is June the 6th. And if council wants to consider some things that we might be able to discuss, and I think we'll discuss that at the 6th meeting, and see if it's appropriate that we have a delegation there or not. Okay. So that's so that I'm going to make that recommendation, or somebody else can make that recommendation, then that's what we do. And we'll come back and defer this till the 6th of June. That's right. June.
June the sixth, the next regular.
Yeah.
meeting, June 9th.
Okay. You've got 3 days. Got all kinds of time. So,
I'll make a motion to defer it until June 6th.
okay. Moved by Greg, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. I'll read the motion. Be resolved the report from Pat Kent dated May 23rd, 2023 regarding the Association of Municipalities of Ontario Conference, August 23rd, 20th to 23rd, 2023 we received, and further that council defer this decision until the June 6th meeting. Moved by Councillor Booth and seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. That's right. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, are you okay for a few minutes or need a break? Or are you okay?
Just 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay. Well, we'll make it at, why don't we make it 8 minutes? 10 days. Is that okay? Is that enough time for everybody?
Yep.
Okay, I need a motion to recess. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. All in favor? Recess for 8 minutes. Let's not do that. Is that too cheap?
Stretch our legs. Can't even have a
Run. That's the goal.
These late nights for you.
say that we have an opportunity here for people to come into our municipality. The tourism industry is probably our second biggest market that we have, and we need a place for people to stay. And there's a debate on how many of these short-term rentals we have out there, but if it is true that we have, 250 of them out there that we don't know about, I would say that those people must be doing a real good job at running their short-term resident, because we're only getting a complaint from, 5 or 7 out of the 51 that we know about. So it would be nice to get those other people on board and working within the bylaw and making them legal. So anyways, I'll turn that over to the mayor.
Thank you, Mike. The sound's not working? Mine or?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Whatever you did, perfect. Sorry about that. Mike, you want to start all over again?
Yeah.
Mike, thank you for your report. Does council have any questions or comments to the report? Okay. Seeing none, I'll read a resolution. Be it resolved that the report from the short-term rental ad hoc committee dated May 23rd, 2022 be received and filed. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Go ahead.
I'd just like to, when you're saying receive and file, what do you mean by that?
I mean that we're going to receive it and file it, and for now until we go on and see some other stuff.
Thank you.
Okay,
I will receive and file it then.
thank you. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Next, we have correspondence received from Northumberland Central Chamber of Commerce dated April 24th, 2023 regarding short-term rentals. Be it resolved that the correspondence received from Northumberland Central Chamber of Commerce dated April 24th, 2023 regarding short-term rentals be received and filed. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Booth, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Further, any discussion? All in favor? Carried. And next we have item 16, which is delegations regarding short-term rentals. And I believe we have 1, 2, 3, 4 presentations. Just for you, so you're all aware, the procedural bylaw allows for delegations. However, they are limited to a 10-minute speech. And after that's done, we'll call time and you'll have to pass it on to the next person. So the first delegation listed here is by Meg and Albert Botha. Thank you for coming and making your presentation.
Like to pass this book around, you're welcome to open it at any page you want. Those are just some comments from our guests that stayed with us for the last couple of years.
Just hold on for a second. Hold you.
My name is Meg Rota, and I'm the art director of Watershed Magazine.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Can everybody hear? Okay. You're going to have to can you mind taking the mic and?
Hello? My name is Meg Bota, and I'm the art director of Watershed Magazine and have been a local resident of Grafton for the past 30 years. I would like to share with you my experience as an Airbnb or STR owner. My husband and our 2 children owned a farm in Grafton, a wonderful place to raise kids. We had the farm for over 10 years, but it became apparent that as we grew older and there was no one in the family to take it over, that selling was the only option. During this time, my elderly parents also had to sell their home. My brother and I decided that perhaps a wonderful idea would be to build a home for all of us. And so our new adventure began. We ended up building by the water near Wicklow Beach. We call it the pod home. Pod for our kids, a pod for us, and a pod for mom and dad, all interconnected. It was the perfect solution. In the process, we still had the farm. So the decision was made to Airbnb it. It was a great idea. We could share our lovely farm with people and educate them on farm living and all that it entails, and introduce them to our lovely neighborhood. We ran a very successful, well-loved, non-money gouging, which I needed to say, as there appears to be some members of the committee that think that people with Airbnbs are in it for a quick and profitable money grab. I take offense to those that think that, far from the truth. We became 5-star hosts with all sorts of people coming to enjoy the farm. Albert would take them on tours and show them the sheep and all the other animals we had. I have a book that offered our guests an opportunity to comment on their stay, which you're all more than welcome to read. Our farm was a special place for our guests, and we took pride in educating those about farm life and where their food comes from and how hard farmers work. That was our main goal. Owning an Airbnb is a lot of work. If you're proud of your Airbnb, you go all out to ensure your guests have the most memorable stay. From fresh flowers, trimmed lawns, baked goods, fresh sheets, fluff pillows, wonderful cozy surroundings. It all makes a difference. My motto has always been, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So making it special, well, that doesn't just happen. A lot of preparation and care go into it. During this process of Airbnb, there was a family in Grafton that lost their home in a fire. We received a frantic call and met Neil and Chantel and their family and immediately offered up our home for them to stay in. There was no question. I always said God has a plan, and he most certainly did. They ended up staying for several months while their home was being dealt with, and in that time fell in love with the farming life and have since moved to a little hobby farm of their own. I'm grateful to have met them and so thankful that something rubbed off by being at our Airbnb, that they chose to raise their children in a similar manner. In fact, they took our beautiful Pyrenees dog Tucker with them. Now we live with my 95-year-old dad and my 88-year-old mom overlooking what we endearingly call the ocean by Wicklow Beach. And we appreciate every day that gift of being together has given us. But the reality is, when my brother and I designed the home we're now in, that should there come a time that mom and dad are no longer with us, thinking long-term, we would Airbnb it. It's the only way that we could afford to stay in this special place with the memories of mom and dad and the kids here. Imagine my concern when we are now told there will be no Airbnb allowed on the waterfront, that Airbnbs will now have to pay a yearly fee, and that there will be many restrictions regarding Airbnbs. I'm not going to lie. If this occurs, my family and I will be in financial trouble. How did this all go so wrong? How did owning an Airbnb that one is proud of start to become such a threat? I understand that there are Airbnbs that do not have proud owners, that are Airbnbs that overflow with more guests than they're allowed. There are cottages that have been rented out to obnoxious people, and there have been rightful complaints made. Why did the township not follow up and find these owners, reprimand them according to the existing bylaws? Why must a few bad Airbnbs dictate what happens to the majority of honorable Airbnbs? This is not a new comment. I believe that before rules and regulations are passed down to honorable Airbnb owners, charging those that have disturbed people should be the priority, so that the agitated few will find comfort knowing their complaints have been heard and dealt with, and rightfully so. Then step back and see where we land. To now instill restrictions and new costs to honorable Airbnb owners seems to my mind ridiculous and does not bode well for council's lack of action taken against those bad few. My understanding is that there were 27 complaints against just 5 properties amongst 52 Airbnbs in 1 year. To place a cost on just having an Airbnb would mean that 1 month's worth of weekends goes to the township. Now that smells like a money grab to me. And knowing that most Airbnbs run only in the summer, you don't leave much room for a small profit to run them in the first place. Is the ultimate goal from the few members on council to squeeze the Airbnbs out completely? Is that what's happening here? In which case, all those people in my book, in that green book, who would have liked to return and enjoy our little towns and we'll just have to explain to them that they're not welcome. There's no room in the inn. Not sure that's neighborly or the message we would like to send out. Not to mention the disappointed shopkeepers and cafes, restaurants, garden centers, and farmers markets, which could benefit from the Airbnbs. I don't mean to get the township's hackles up, but really, step outside the box a moment and address the true situation. People can't afford their own home anymore. My kids can't afford their own home. The solution for many of us is to share and become an Airbnb owner if possible. That's the only way our family can stay where we are. That was the long-term reason why we built our home the way we did. My family and I are not the only ones who designed and built a home with this in mind. Not only single families have this model, but developers are now building with this very idea in mind. We are heading into summer. People want to come and visit again. Where will they stay? Please allow Airbnbs to exist and not be penalized for existing, but rather to exist in a fair and noble way. Don't look at honorable Airbnb owners to fix those issues that some neighbors have complained about. The township gets paid to enforce the bylaws and fine those responsible for adding stress and worry to those affected. If the township has not been able to enforce the existing bylaws, how will the township enforce the new bylaws that council is recommending? I can promise, once the bad apples are sorted out and the dust settles, all will be well in the land. Thank you.
We are here representing the Almond Business Association. We are currently 62 members strong. We do represent over 500 employees in this township. And so I hope that council will look at it seriously when they make this decision of the impact that your decision is going to make on business and tourism in this township. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Your timing was perfect. Next we have Tim Annis. Enos. Good evening. Thank you for coming.
Mayor Logo, honorable councilors, staff, fellow residents of Elmwood Haldeman Township. In our community, the issue of short-term rentals has been divisive and surrounded by misconceptions and perhaps some preconceptions. I would like to provide our perspective along with some data from some current published Canadian research. I'll begin by stating that our property is not intended for full-time rental. It will be unavailable certain times, such as holidays, when our children visit, and when we are away from home. Additionally, we have storage areas in the unit, so we could not make it a long-term rental. Next, I'd like to speak to the preconception that the only reason to run a short-term rental is to reap wild profits from a constant influx of high rental rates with no oversight. Our research, which includes data from the Canadian Journal of Urban Research, suggests that short-term rental listings in rural areas such as ours are only actually rented for 30% of the time that they are available, including seasonal variations. Based on our projections for availability, what we have determined is a fair market rate for short-term rentals in this area, and the estimation from the research, we anticipate that a licensing fee of $750 per year would consume as much as 30 to 40% of gross annual revenue earned as a short-term rental. This doesn't even include setup costs such as furniture, towels, sheets, or regular operating costs such as laundry, cleaning, and other maintenance. Nor does it include costs for suggested annual building, fire, and other inspections. I recognize that council has a difficult job in terms of navigating policy, planning, legal, and regulatory issues. However, I cannot think of any other small businesses operating within Alnwick-Haldimand that are saddled with such prohibitive, even punitive fees before they are even able to start generating revenue. We love our home and the beauty that surrounds us in Alnwick-Haldimand Township. We would dearly love to be able to share that with our own guests, just as we have shared in the beauty in places all over the world as guests of short-term rentals. It is my position that council must account for the diversity in types of short-term rentals and refrain from creating licensing regulations that see all hosts as profit-driven commercial operations. Failing to take this into account would be like forcing a bicycle courier to pay the same licensing and inspection fees as a transport truck operator. Perhaps a better analogy would be forcing all drivers to pay the same insurance rates as the worst 4% of drivers on the road. That happens to be exactly the same percentage of the 51 STRs that were identified as operating in the township as compared to the 2 STRs that made up 90% of the complaints that triggered this bylaw in the first place. I read in the minutes of a recent council meeting where a SWOT analysis was presented that one of the major strengths of Alnwick-Haldimand Township is its potential for tourism. I also read that one of the major weaknesses is a lack of tourist accommodation. This is rather ironic in the light of the township's apparent goal to strangle the life out of short-term rentals. Therefore, I suggest that council reconsider the licensing fee structure for short-term rentals and adopt a more equitable policy that supports rather than harms responsible hosts. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next, we have Maria and Emmanuel Papadakis. Okay. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Council, for inviting me to speak today. So I'm Maria Papadakis. My husband and I have been residents of Grafton for 10 years. We live on Nawatan Shores, and we're also part of the Alma-Calderman Business Owners Association. So why we're here, obviously in support of STRs, we attended all the ad hoc committee meetings. Many of us are here because of how important STRs are to our community's livelihood. So rather than repeating all those reasons, I'm going to keep it quick and to let you know why we personally, we support STRs, but I'm going to focus my delegation on just a recommendation that was put forth by the committee to prohibit lakeshore residential. We don't currently have an STR, but we're considering it if need be. Our business was really hit by the pandemic. We had larger business in Toronto that we've scaled back to just my husband and I. So we feel that we'd like to have that option, and excluding shoreline residents is very unfair. And we'd like the opportunity to be able to also use our home to make extra income if needed. We understand there's been some incidents and bad apples on the lakefront, but I don't agree with lumping us all together. If we decided to rent our home, our STR would fall into one of these two categories. So private accommodation within an existing dwelling, or private accommodation in an accessory structure on an existing owner-occupied property like a studio or granny suite. So both options would be owner-occupied. I could quickly recap the benefits of owning an STR for the owner-operator. So it obviously offsets the living expenses, offsets the cost of owning a home against rising interest rates and expenses. We'd love to be able to just earn enough to pay our taxes, for instance. There's a host protection through well-regulated platforms like Verbo and Airbnb. And as owners, being on the property, I'm sure would prevent escalating disturbances and complaints from happening or getting off hand in the first place. Benefits to the community, again, people have spoken about, but they contribute to local employment. Personally, in our family, my brother lives here in Grafton, and he's employed by a couple of the local Airbnbs. Buying local is another benefit. STRs direct guests to local businesses such as restaurants, bakeries, and retail stores. And they provide an opportunity for guests to discover the township. We've been here 10 years. This happened, we discovered Grafton when we spent time at St. Anne's. There was no looking back. So in conclusion, I told you I'd be quick. We respectfully ask the council that as they go forward after reviewing the ad hoc committee's recommendations, to please reconsider including shoreline residential as a viable category like all other STRs. We appreciate so much the fact that you've spent so much time between council, staff, ad hoc committee, and also the residents on both sides that were there to voice their opinion. We appreciate you taking the time also to hear me, inviting me to speak today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Next, we have Britt Cole, Valerie McDonald, and Colleen Mitchell. Oh, Colleen's there.
I think that's cool.
Is, do you know if Colleen's joining us or is she on?
Colleen is online.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Logal, council members, staff, and residents.
My name is Grit Cole and I've lived in Grafton for 20 years. Valerie McDonald lives in Curtis Point Road, a private road on Rice Lake, and Colleen Mitchell lives on North Shore Road, located on the shores of Lake Ontario. We thank you for the opportunity to address unresolved issues around location, density, ownership, lack of enforcement in response to complaints, and the licensing of short-term rentals in Alma-Calderman Township. Now, I know people want to have the facts and understand. Why is my presentation not showing up? Where do I share it from here? I'm sorry, I've not done that before. No problem. I can move if you want. There it is. There. Yeah. Okay. Super. Okay, so I assume everyone has had an opportunity to read through the presentation we delivered. I've made a short change to what I'm going to present at the beginning. Because of the zoning bylaw that's in place and the STR bylaw that's in place, it's important to understand what our bylaw actually represents. And a short-term rental accommodation means commercial renting of a single detached dwelling for up to 30 days. The short-term rental does not include a tourist establishment, motel, hotel, or camping park. STRAs must be licensed within the township of Alma-Calderman. The zone prohibitions were deliberately strict. Thank you. Next. I got it. So they were deliberately strict with the intent to review in 1 year. Only one council member is on this current council that sat on the previous one. And the reason that it was strict was not meant to be permanent. And we tried to express that at the ad hoc committee meeting, but it did not connect. So we've reviewed it and still not satisfactory. So the other thing under our licensing bylaw, which was passed on July 7th, and that repealed the 69/2022 that was passed on May 19th of 2022, defines the dwelling unit. And that means basically a living unit where people have heating and sanitary services, kitchen operations, sleeping, basically what we have in our homes. It does not include a tent, trailer, mobile home, hotel, motorhome, or rooms in a boarding or rooming house. The principal residence is owned or rented by persons as their home. Now, it's important to note that bed and breakfasts do not meet the definition of a dwelling unit and are already regulated under the zoning bylaw and not subject to STR licensing at this time. And in fact, the nature retreat, the unique nature retreat situations, experiences. My suggestion during the ad hoc committee was that it be brought under the zoning bylaw, just as bed and breakfasts are, because some of these are only charging $50 a night or $75. It's not like some of the STRs on the shorelines that are charging $300 to $1,000 a night, depending on where they're located. So that's important to know. Also in our bylaw, no person shall use, operate, or advertise an STR without a current license. No person shall violate the guest code of conduct, and no more than 2 guests per room. No addition of tents, trailers permitted when the STRA is operating. That means that if you're living in your home and you got your grandkids for a weekend and you want to pitch a tent in the backyard, you can do that. But if you're renting your short-term rental, you can't, because then you've got those people bringing in extras. Sounds logical. and all STRs are to comply with municipal bylaws and provincial legislation. Well, I submit that any home business that exists in this township must also comply with the municipal bylaws and provincial legislations that apply directly to home businesses within their home, which is separate from an STR because the business owner is present. And a license shall only be permitted in owner's principal residence. That's missing, but that's okay. That's what it means. That's what's in the current bylaw. License shall expire on December 31st of the year issued. On June 2nd, the public notice of decision for the bylaw was published, and it addressed the reasons for the bylaw: noise, traffic, trespassing, occupancy overloads, fireworks, impact on private roads, impact on septic services, loss of waterfront access, destabilization of residential neighborhoods. Council staff acknowledged and responded to issues and enacted the bylaw. Follow-up on complaints and bylaw complaint reports are scant, do not reflect the true extent of complaints, and should not be considered when review and decisions of council are made. Now, I have to concur with my fellow delegates this evening that there is residents have been pitted against one another on opposite sides of this issue. And it's due to the lack of enforcement that has continued. So at this point in time, I'm actually going to turn it over. I'd like to introduce Valerie McDonald. She is a well-respected news reporter in Northumberland County for many, 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 many years, and is a homeowner in Almakaldaman Township.
Thank you. Depending on what decisions this council makes about short-term rentals, like Airbnbs or Verbos, anyone in this municipality could end up with one of them beside them. Mayor Logal, councillors, fellow and ad hoc committee members, and members of the public. And I've lost my cursor. There we go. I have lived on 6108 Curtis Point Road along Rice Lake for over 10 years. When I and my late husband moved in, most of our neighbors were full-time residents. Things have changed drastically. There are upwards of 4 illegally operating short-term rentals on this private, short, narrow, dead-end road in a high-density residential area. And that's about a length of about a mile in length. On the holiday weekend after the bylaw came into effect, the first renters appeared at number 30. That's my immediate neighbor west of me, and just 10 feet away from me, front and back decks 10 feet away, bedroom windows lining up 10 feet away. Despite multiple and continued official objections with photos submitted by me to the municipality through the proper complaint process, that operation has continued since then, within days of the passage of the bylaw last spring, through the winter and into this spring. Different vehicles with different renters arriving to stay for different weekends. Indeed, the bylaw enforcement building department and the fire department were aware that renovations were ongoing through the winter and early spring leading up to May of 2022 at the neighbors, number 30, because they visited when I reported of a fire of construction materials in the front yard on a high wind day. And I spoke with the bylaw enforcement officer, myself, also with the fire chief, and both of those people came to the premises. They were aware of renovations and the intent going on that property, which was previously a residential property and now has been taken out of use and is unavailable for people living here or wanting to move in here as a form of housing. Council has received one legal opinion that STRs in continuous operation are to be given the opportunity to meet the bylaw, even though the existing bylaw prohibits them. Those STRs in non-compliance and operating illegally should not be rewarded for failing to adhere to the bylaw already in place for almost a year. In particular, number 30, my neighbor, was not in use as an STR before the May 19 bylaw came into place last year. and I am willing to swear an affidavit to that effect. As I mentioned, only 10 feet separate our rear patios. Our windows line up, as do front decks. I am intimately aware of the ongoing of reconstruction work and I spoke with the first renters. In fact, I had to help them because if you'll recall, that first weekend was that huge storm. We all lost power and they came over wondering what they could do. They were in the midst of needing washroom facilities. They were bathing a baby. And I had to explain to them because they had no recourse in terms of getting in touch with the corporation that runs this one and about another 100 across Ontario. 2 petitions were signed by neighbors and others in the township objecting to STRs before the first bylaw was passed. They did this because they have lived with the noise, the garbage, the roaming drunks, and concerns about violence from STRs, all impacting our quality of life. From the next door, I have personally dealt with illegal fires, noise in the wee hours of the morning, and concern for my own safety as different people I don't know move in for a short period of time and leave again in what is supposed to be a residential neighborhood. Brighton has a bylaw that addresses grandfathering. Again, people who have failed to comply with the bylaw should have no rights to be grandfathered at all. Furthermore, why hasn't the existing STR zoning and licensing bylaw been enforced by this township? Without enforcement, does changing the existing bylaws make any sense as the next step? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Logal, we do have another delegate, and if we are over time, then could we please request an extension as was granted to a delegation at your last council meeting?
Council, there's a request made to add some time. Need a mover and a seconder to do so. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover.
I'll second that, but I have a question.
Go ahead.
How much time are we talking about?
Hopefully no more than 4 minutes.
I actually moved into 3 minutes.
Yeah. She's not going to read what she has. She's actually going to address bias points.
Mover and seconder, all in favor? Motion's carried.
I'd like to introduce Colleen Mitchell, who's in New York City and unable to attend in person, but she is here via Zoom. And she will be representing the residents on North Shore Road and on the Lake Ontario to the south.
Thank you. I just have a few quick comments. I'll keep it brief. I think it's important to note that only one STR has been licensed since the bylaw came into effect. Therefore, for most of the past year, every single STR that was advertising and or operating in this township was operating in contravention of the bylaws. And that should be of a real concern to council. The very STR operators that are asking council to amend the bylaws are blatantly flouting the existing bylaws, and they should not now be rewarded for their behavior by having the bylaws amended. To date, there have been no consequences for every single one of the STRs that have operated since the bylaws came into effect last year. As mentioned, there have been numerous complaints lodged with the township, not just regarding noise, trespassing, partying, and overcrowding, but also there have been complaints that SDRs have been operating without a license, but not one fine has been levied in regard to any of the complaints that have been lodged. Bylaws are of absolutely no use if individuals ignore those bylaws and the township fails to do anything to enforce them. It's imperative that council ensure that the existing bylaws are being enforced before any amendments are made. The township's failure to enforce the bylaws, despite the numerous complaints, has resulted in residents suffering not just loss of enjoyment of their property, but actual quantifiable damages, such as expenses related to having to install cameras, signs, lighting, and even fencing on their property in an attempt to keep guests of STRs from trespassing. This is entirely unacceptable, and council should be concerned that the township's lack of enforcement of the bylaws may result in residents commencing legal action, not only against the STR operators, but also against the township for its failure to enforce the bylaws. It's not unreasonable to assume that the township will be incurring costs to retain lawyers to defend lawsuits, and those costs will be passed on to the ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you.
In closing, we'd like to say that licensing and enforcement of existing STRA bylaws are essential steps before any amendment should be considered by council. Furthermore, we totally respect the work and efforts that responsible STR owners put into their activities, and not all are there just for the money gouging, but there are some, and those are the ones that are the ones we're requesting to be seriously addressed before the others happen. And even during the ad hoc committee, there was much discussion around where these STRs should be permitted, and agricultural, rural, that's wonderful. And I listened to Meg Bota's talk about their property, and it sounds fabulous. And of course, that would be in a rural area. It's not an Airbnb though, it's a short-term rental. Airbnb is just an advertising platform. But anyways, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Valerie, Grit, and is it Colleen? I want to thank everybody for making their presentations. Different positions, but all heartfelt. And what's the right word for it? Everybody's taking this to the best of their ability, and they want to bring us to council their concerns, and we appreciate all of that. And I got to give you this book back, but I haven't finished it yet, but there's certainly a lot to look here. Don't leave it, Meg. Okay. All right, we've received those reports. Is any recommendations from council? Go ahead, Mike.
Through you, Mayor Logo. Just a couple of comments, and then I do have a recommendation, is that like this council gets the bylaw issues here in Elma Coleman Township, and I'm asking the residents to give us a chance to straighten that out. And that will help with some of the complaints that residents have because of the problematic short-term rental owners and renters that come in there. We have made some small steps here in the last couple of meetings for bylaw enforcement, and we continue to improve on that. So, you know, if we can put to rest some of these complaints, then, you know, because I don't like to see anything that's dividing our municipality and dividing our residents. So we should all be working together to try to fix this up. And I agree with the other statements that we shouldn't be painting everybody with the same brush, because we have a few bad apples. So you know, as council, and I think council here, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but I just know that we all want to work hard at making sure, like, not just short-term rentals, but all bylaws are being enforced in the township. So and leaving that, I just wonder, Mayor, if I would make a motion to defer any issues with this year until maybe our first meeting in June, so we can you know, make our own comments and work together as a team to try to put this together for the final review.
Thank you. That's a motion. So do we have a seconder? Councillor Booth, any further discussions before we go ahead, Councillor Booth?
Through you, Your Worship, I think that's a good idea, Councillor Ainsworth, because I believe we have, and maybe the clerk can confirm that there was a few more people that asked to be a delegation to speak on this. So before we make a decision, I think it's only fair to allow those people that put their name in to listen to what they have to say too.
Delegation request, they came in on deadline, so that would give us an opportunity to send you your change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions or comments from council? Go ahead, Councilor.
Through your Mayor
Deputy
Local.
Mayor.
Um, I think we're close and, again, I thank everybody for coming tonight. It's, I know I can't speak for council, but I do know that, times are tough. And I think that we're close and, we just need to take a little bit more time and, make sure we've got it right and, move forward.
Thank you. Further discussion? Okay, we have a motion to defer until the June 6th meeting, where there'll be further discussion. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to announcements and notices of motion. These are planning related, and we have first Councillor Ainsworth.
None at this time, Mayor.
Councillor Booth,
Nothing at this time.
Councillor O'Neill. Myself, I only have one thing. If I can find it. She shook her
She
head.
heard you. Oh, did she?
I received a letter the other day from the HTM Insurance. This is a company out of Coburg. They have been in business for 125 years. And they are having a celebration. And they've asked all members of council to attend. It is on June the 2nd at their office from 11:30 till 3 for food, fun, and entertainment. They're celebrating 125 years. And I'm going to pass this on to Pat. I'm unable to attend, but if you can put your yes or your no's on there, and Pat, I'm sure we'll get back to them for that. And Deputy Mayor Stolberg?
Well, I did have one thing and I happened to notice it today. And it had to do with the crosswalk out here. And I know it's not a planning issue, but I know that you hang out at the county. And so I just wonder if you're able to repaint that crosswalk, get that repainted. And as well, proper signage before and after it. I know that that crosswalk is going to be an issue, especially when we're bringing more people into living in the municipality. So I leave it with you, Mayor Logal, to see if what you can do about getting it painted and proper signage.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but Councillor Ainsworth has approached the county to take a look at the crossing as it exists.
Oh.
And they are working with our staff to
Oh.
see where we should go. And I believe they're doing some, my understanding, I did see a little bit of literature, and I think you probably saw it too, Mike, where there's specifications of how many cars go by there in a day and how many people walk across there, and they do a calculation based on this, that, and the other thing.
Perfect.
But as far as painting, I'm not sure who would have painted that in the past. Is that the county that does that? Yeah, we can send well, why don't we make a motion?
Oh, well, I can make a motion.
Okay. Go ahead. Nope. No, you can't, not without a, but you can talk to us after. Well, I can't because it's against the, well, that's what I'm going to do. Just be patient. We've had a request from the gallery to make a comment,
I would move that.
and that would be by Terry.
Yes.
And you'd like to move that we
I'll
give her
move
an
it,
opportunity to
yes.
speak? And Greg, you're going to second? All in favor? Well, just a minute, I've seen some, did I see you all in favor?
Yep.
Okay. You may go ahead.
Could you, Terry, could you come to the?
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. It's a concern about the sidewalk. It's been painted by an independent company for the last few years. There's two sidewalks, both ill-placed. And if we're not determining that it's a marked sidewalk for the drivers to see, then we should not continue to paint it. It either is one or it isn't. And I watch elementary school kids come up twice a week and go back and forth eating between front of my restaurant and the Grafton Inn. And they see a sidewalk, and to them that means safety to cross. And we've seen some close to terrifying moments. So until we've determined whether we can sign it, I would really request that we don't paint it.
Oh, well, I guess it's.
They have informed me from the county that it's not a legal
No, it's not.
crossing. So until it is, it's terrifying. These kids just, they see a sidewalk. I watch people all the time. It's not just kids, there's elderly as well. And they see a sidewalk and that means that's a safe place to cross. And it certainly is not.
You mean crosswalk?
So crosswalk
Okay.
from one sidewalk to the other sidewalk.
Crosswalk.
But there's two of them and they're very ill placed, both of them.
Excuse me.
No, no.
Excuse me. This
Okay.
is one person that's
Yeah.
asked to speak, and this
Yeah.
is one we're gonna let speak.
So that would be, that's all I had. That is my genuine concern. Joan and I have, Deputy Mayor Stover and I have spoken about it. And just watch the high volume of traffic,
And,
construction, trucks coming around that corner, and that'll be a sad day.
and I will kind of concur with what you said. It's an unofficial walkway, but it's,
It's
Yeah.
getting there.
yes.
Yeah.
So I think Mike's or approaching the council, the county, Public Works is the right thing to do. And perhaps we should be formally sending something to the county because otherwise they'll get to it eventually, but.
Yeah.
And perhaps we should ask them to give their advice. Maybe that the painting that's there should be taken off.
Thank you very much.
Because it could be, it's confusing.
Mhm.
So can I get a mover and a seconder to,
Mayor Logal,
yes,
I'd like to raise a point of order of this discussion. To me, this is announcements or notice of motion. So if this is something we want to have as a notice of motion, I think it should come as a notice of motion so people can read it, because this is such a big discussion that we don't want to be winging it at the end of a meeting at this point.
so what are you saying?
I think that this should come back to us as a motion or a notice of motion at another meeting when it's been thought through carefully.
You okay with that?
Yep, yeah, just
Okay.
as long as it's on the move.
Well, be on the move once you make the notice of motion.
I like to make the notice of motion that we do further investigation on the status of the crosswalk and the improvements that could be made to it.
Are you okay with that? Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Do we need a second? We don't need a second. Okay. Anything else, Deputy Mayor?
Nope, that's it.
Approval of the confirming bylaw number 58, 2023, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the municipal planning meeting of Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. Be it resolved that bylaw number 58, 2023, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the municipal planning meeting of Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 be read and deemed to be passed this 23rd day of May 2023. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover and seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. And adjournment. Be it resolved, the municipal planning meeting be adjourned at 8:53. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Ainsworth. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you to the gallery and thank you to the people on.
No, this is Friday. Friday, June 2nd. I can say it's a